Good morning, buenos dias, bonjour. Welcome everybody to Thursday Spiritual Matters here at the Daily Huddle. I'm your host, Dr. Monikah Ogando. And today we are going to be talking about what is the role of community and culture in your spiritual journey. I have a quote for you. Because we hardly ever do jokes in Spiritual Matters Thursday, and that is an African proverb that I am very fond of saying when I'm dealing with my troubled children. And the quote says, the proverb says, "The abandoned or neglected child will burn the village just to feel its warmth." We're going to talk about that when we come back. Welcome. Well, good morning once again, and welcome to Spiritual Matters Thursday. I am your host, Dr. Monikah Ogando, and before we get started in this discussion, I want to center us in the now moment. So I want you to take a deep breath with me. And release it with a sound. I want to find out, Rashida, how are you and what are you thankful for?
Oh, I am just fine, not stressed. And what I'm thankful for, I am thanking the universe for awakening me this morning. I am so grateful that I can share space with you all guys. And I'm so grateful for that.
I love it. I love that. Awesome. Andrea is here. Hello, Andrea. Andrea, who are you hugging today?
I think I want to hug you all virtually. I missed you terribly, but I'm back and hopefully I can see more of your faces.
Yeah.
Coming up. Yep.
Happy to see you. This is awesome. Good stuff. Chase, what time is it where you are?
The time is undoubtedly right now.
Indubitably, darling.
Indubitably.
I am so happy to see all of you and to see your names and your presences, etc. And as you know, Spiritual Matters Thursdays, because sometimes we can get so heady, it is so important to me that we are always remaining in community and in engagement. So that's why sometimes I ask you, put a one in the chat if blah, 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 because I want to know that you are here with me, I want to feel you. And one of the ways that we do that is in community, in engagement. And hence our conversation today of the role of community and of culture in your spiritual journey. When I first heard that quote, "The child that is not embraced by the village or neglected or abandoned by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth," it resonated with me so deeply because I immediately recognized some of the ways in which we sometimes sabotage that which we love or that serves us because we're not getting what we need from it. And we live, all of us in the Western world, live in a primary culture that celebrates individuality almost at the expense of community. And so I want to be in the conversation with you about what are some of the maybe unspoken desires or wish lists that you have about community that you've kind of put aside because you're like, but we're not going to get it. So just put it away. That you wish you did get. And what are some of the ways in which you yourself have abandoned community for the sake of, let's say, individuality? I'm going to give you my answers to kind of give you an idea of the dialogue I'm looking for here. So one of the things that I deeply, deeply desire in community is to be able to kind of like work out the stuff that I grapple with in community, because I think there's deep value in having other people's perspective on things. I know that the way I have it isn't the way that it is. I know that. But sometimes I don't know what I don't know. And the value of community is that I have access to somebody else's wisdom, somebody else's perspective, somebody else's resources, somebody else's intuition, somebody else's insight that I don't necessarily have a direct line to, but because I'm in relationship with you, I have access to what you got, and vice versa. And I deeply desire that in community. And sometimes what gets in the way is I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to look like I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want this weak thing or contradiction or paradox to be used against me later, to be weaponized if we ever fall out. What if I can't return the favor? What if then you need me and then I can't be there for you the way that I'm requesting that you be there for me, and then now I feel like I owe you something. And so those pieces, those yeah buts, sometimes are strong enough to stop me from being in community. And then sometimes I am awake enough, well rested and well fed enough to have my common sense about me and be able to say, you know what, that's exactly the reason to be in community. The reason to not is the reason to, right? When I say to myself, oh, I can't afford it, that's precisely why you should do it, because you think you can't afford it, right? And so in the same way with community, with emotional prices that we sometimes pay for our vulnerability, for our exposure, for our transparency, for our authenticity, et cetera. And so those are some of the things that I deeply desire in community, to be able to work out the shadow side, the contradictions, the places where I'm not at my best. And because I know that the power of observation is is a fuel for transformation. And mediocrity sometimes thrives in secrecy, in private. Right? It's like if you don't see it, then I don't have to show it to you. Then I don't have to do anything about it. I could just live with it. So I want to hear from you where community matters to you, and maybe perhaps where you've been disappointed by community such that you would be hesitant about it. Because for as long as there has been documented human history, we have been in community with each other. Even if it's adversarial community, even if it's like warring tribes. But the thing that communities have in common is a common purpose, or if not purpose, then common interests. And we see that at the family level of community, at the marriage level of community, at the school or church, or even hobbies, sports teams, cities, countries, states. You know, at some point, people rally around a common purpose or a common interest, even if it's just to protect our borders, to protect our resources, et cetera, et cetera. And what I'm inviting you to consider is that, yes, even though there can be a defensive way to be in community, kind of like the conversation of the enemy of my enemy is my friend, I am inviting us to explore the ways in which we can actually move towards a common interest or purpose instead of uniting because there's something we're defending against. So I'll repeat the question. What are some of the ways in which you desire to be in community that you've hesitated, and why? What are some of the ways in which you have desired to be in community and either it hasn't worked out or you've hesitated, and why? Ooh, Laura, let's go.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Gratitude for this community in this sacred space. Yes. Let me off this massage stuff. Okay, yeah. So I desire to be in spiritual communities.
Uh-huh.
Yes, and the spiritual communities that have experienced, I got disappointed because of my trauma from religious community as a child. And I get triggered. So, but you know, I know, oh, well, this is not a community I want to be in. I'm not going to be in a community that is going to trigger me at all. So that I would say I am desperately seeking the community of like-minded people or spiritual communities of like-minded people.
Mm-hmm.
I might be controversial in terms of belief, because sometimes I do believe that belief distorts reality. And I'm not the one who accepts certain precepts, certain concepts, certain people's belief. I'm a free spirit, free thinker. And it's, I'm in few communities that, you know, but they still hold on to archaic beliefs. So
what is it that you deeply desire from community?
To to be on the same page. To be on the same page in terms of what I want in terms of accepting nature, accepting life as it is. So I'm wanting connectedness to people of, you know, in my same belief. Well, but why did I say before? People who are accepting of me and what, you know, not, who will accept me? Connectedness.
Okay.
I'm committed.
All right. So I'm beginning to unfold some of these criteria that we use for being in community. And what I hear from you is, one, the space to be able to explore and get to know one another, and two, to do it from a spirit of acceptance, of like, meet you where you are. I may not necessarily understand or agree, but I defend to the death your right to feel or do or believe whatever it is that you believe, and still be in relationship with you about it. Does that summarize?
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
All right, awesome. I like it. Thank you, Laura. Rashida?
Good morning, my family, Daily Huddle. I am so happy to share space with you all guys. Doctor, I love the point you're making. And one of the things that, the way I was raised, community conscious wise, I come from an Indian and also Jamaican background.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I have learned from my grandpapa, my aunties, and my whole ancestral background is that the community was strong. And I took that with me and my path and my 62 years that I am living on this planet. I build communities because I think I'm part of that community. And if I participate in the community, giving back, you eventually will get back what you put into it. And why I say this is because I left Costa Rica 32 years ago. And I live in a community where I got married, I raised my kids. And 2 months ago, one of my neighbors called me and tell me that they was breaking into the house that I have in that community. And she expressed herself, she said, I could not see someone hurting or damaging your property and not reach out to you. So I would say is, in what I have learned from my ancestors, I have built a strong community. And mind you, I didn't even have the concept or the mindset that they feel that strong about me. So the community for me For the
Yeah.
community, for me, is what you build into the community. Don't expect anything back from the community, because eventually you will get back. And this is what I tell you, 32 years later,
Yeah.
I have not known that I have built that strong connection with my neighbors. So
Yeah,
community comes from me, from in. So what you give back is what you're going to get back. That is how I see it, because I remember my grandpapa, some of the neighbors, them would do corn and they would do rice and they would exchange. So
Yeah.
that for me was a strong community, and that's what I follow. Until today, I follow that. So with that, I'm out.
I love that, Rashida. What you're sharing reminds me of, I heard somebody say a story once, and to be fair, I don't know if it's true or not, but the point remains just as poignant. She was sharing how at some point there was a family that moved into that particular neighborhood that they were like the poorest in the neighborhood. And they would often come to her to ask, like, can we borrow some eggs, or can we borrow some sugar, blah, 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 blah. And so she would sometimes send her kids over there to ask for some salt. And one of the kids was like, but Ma, we don't need salt. Why are you asking for salt? And she said, I always want to make them feel like they can be just as much a contribution to me as they're asking me to be to them, because then it feels like it's a relationship and not just like begging kind of thing. Paraphrasing, but that was the point of the story, right? And I think, to your point, we contribute and we give and we pour into a relationship many times without expectation. It's usually the expectation that breeds the resentment. And then we're so happily surprised, and we feel relieved and validated when we see that return to us. Just like your neighbor was looking out for your property.
But mind you, I am saying 32 years later, after
later,
I moved to America,
yes,
I was like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe that the relationship was so strong, and it still kept strong after so many years of moving from Costa Rica.
Yeah. It's a powerful testament to your footprint, the legacy that you leave behind. That's awesome. Carmen, you have something?
Yes, it's a beautiful topic, because I remember my childhood, those beautiful, precious times, that when we living in community, even in my house, my mother and my grandmother, when they used to cook, they sang out to bring food to the community, to the neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever had milk, they bring it to my mother and my grandma,
Mm-hmm.
and they share everything. And I said the community is the best family ever.
Yeah.
Because sometimes a family we fly from one place to another, but that community is still strong, and they take care of one another. It's the more precious thing to live in community and love and care for your community. Thanks for bringing that topic.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah, so there's, I heard someone say some time ago, I don't know if this is unique to my friend or if it's a common phrase. So you tell me if you've heard it. But I heard my friend say, there's the family you come through, and then there's the family you come to. So you come through your family of origin, your mom, your dad, the people who gave birth to you, the people who raised you, etc. And then there's the family you come to, which is the family you choose, your friends, your community, the people you work with, the folks that you have perhaps some affinity with, some common interests. And we are all part of, whether we like it or not, whether we believe it or not, whether we agree with it or not, you are already by default part of a community. If anything, it's the 8 billion people family that resides on planet Earth. You're part of that community. And then we have smaller concentric circles, and there's the hemisphere you live in, the country you live in, the state, the city, the neighborhood, perhaps affinity like religious beliefs or professional goals, or even sports or hobbies or other interests, maybe even talents. Some of you are musicians, some of you are artists, some of you are singers, some of you are dancers, some of you are writers, some of you are, love theater, some of you love networking, and you'll just listen. You are an Eventbrite queen, right? And you'll go in there and be like, let me see, whose networking event can I crash? Who's got my people? Because relational intelligence, let me just say this, relational intelligence is just as important, if not more, as academic and cognitive intelligence. And people sometimes don't tell you that. You know, there's some people who just have a way, they just have a way with people, right? And then there are others, I don't know if this has ever been your experience, it has been mine. There are some people that are really good with concepts and really good with language and communication, and they kind of understand the concept of things, but not so much the application of things. And then there are others that can walk into a room and they literally can feel the energy and dance with it. I don't know where they learn it from. I don't know that they saw it in a book or whatever, but it's just like this relational intelligence that some folks are just naturally gifted at. And then there's those of us who understand that that exists and we are interested in developing that skill. So, the Daily Huddle is a community also of high achievers, and we get together every day from Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific, child, 6 a.m. Pacific on a Zoom for no reason other than to commune with folks who inspire us, that we can contribute inspiration to, that we can kind of like organize our day around a theme of excellence or of mastery or of curiosity or of reflection or of connection, etc. So my invitation to you today is to see where you are already by default in community, and how you can now, with your awareness and with your deliberate intention, be in community by design, not just by default. How can I be intentional in my participation as a member of this community that I'm already a part of? You are already a part of your community in your neighborhood, in your city, in your state. You are already a part of a community at your work, at your church, at your, whatever clubs you belong to, et cetera, et cetera. So how can I be how can I use my participation in this community to elevate who I am and how I show up in the world? Because that's one of the ways that being in community also contributes to you individually. Have you ever noticed that it's easier for you to keep your word and your appointments with someone else than it is to keep it with yourself? I don't know why. When I say to myself, I'm going to do something at 8 o'clock, it might not get done. But if I say to Andrea, I'll see you there at 8 o'clock, woo, the rigor, baby, right? And so that's one of the powers of community. It elevates our accountability. It elevates the way that we show up in excellence just by existing, for no other reason than because we have a natural tendency as human beings to be in relationship with one another. It is what brings out our best. And when we do not harness it, when we do not do that by design, we do it by default, all manner of chaos ensue. Because sometimes we can be in community based on what we hate, based on what we're protecting, based on what we're defending against. And I'm inviting you to turn that into a more proactive and positive way. So does anybody else have anything else to say, to share, to contribute, to bring into the table? Have we covered everything? I don't know that we've covered everything, but.
Doctor, I am listening to you and I'm hearing you loud and clear. And it's straight, I wouldn't say strange, but sometimes it's happened to me. Mm-hmm. I go and I volunteer at the church, I volunteer at the soup kitchen, and eventually months pass by and they say, oh, are you Rashida? I say, yes, I am Rashida. They say, oh, I heard that you do so good. I was like, oh yes, and I just move on. Mm-hmm. But is the indirect connection that you do this chore or this volunteer work to the community, mm-hmm. and you just leave it, and it's months later somebody is giving you recognition. have given back to the community. And I'm telling you, I do things unconsciously. Oh, you want the church to be clean? Oh, I will come there on Tuesday. You sure? They have to affirm to hear me. You sure you come in? Come on, I'm giving you my word. And this is what people really need to understand, that once you give your word, it's a bond. You already, it's like a contract you give that person, or you give the community. So this is something that I really do and I practice. So definitely it's one of those things that when you belong to the community, there is no way they can outroot you out of the community. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. What you're sharing brings to mind something that Stacy said earlier in the chat. I find that community can't always reciprocate equally amounts to what is given. I'm always asked to provide skill sets, and the community can't give in trade value or in monetary value, in exchange. And I think that this is such an important point, because it brings me back to what we always say here, our 8th principle of audit your assumptions, right? There's this idea that we sometimes give in order so that we can get something that may or may not be the come from. But when somebody asks, when a community asks, can we get this from you, right? If you don't say, this is what I require in order for this to move through, if the culture of the community isn't about reciprocity, it's just pouring and pouring and pouring, and then it's just a sieve. Yes, eventually the most gifted of the folks that are in that community will feel drained and put upon and overburdened, and the least contributing ones will feel self-conscious, or maybe even resistant, or to show up because somebody else takes up a lot of space, or whatever the case may be. So those kind of like unspoken dynamics of being in community need to be talked about, discussed, and agreed upon, so that we know what are the rules of engagement. How do we engage? How do we play with each other? And how do we navigate conflict or unmet expectations? We do not take the time to discuss those things. It's kind of like planning for the divorce before you get married. We don't take time to talk about what's going to happen when we get in a fight. Well, how do we know? How do we define fighting fair? How do we define what to fight about? What happens when we have a disagreement? What happens when my contribution doesn't match what I get in return? What's the word I'm looking for? Recourse. What's my recourse for that? And those are some of the ways, those are some of the protocols that we need to talk about, so that we can feel, so that we can move as though we are an honest and sacred community with one another. Stan says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Community is about going far. Yes, I love that. Thank you, Stan. That's awesome. Thank you, Stacy, also for your comment. That was very helpful, because it brings up a great point of, sometimes you think you're in community with people, and it's like, no, they're just never-ending cell, just using you for what you got. That's not community. That's not what we're talking about. Community, by the way, that word has the same etymological root as communion. The reciprocity is built in there. If it's just a one-way street, that's not community. That's volunteer service. Right? That's charity work. That's not communion. And so I am going to kind of push back on that a little bit, and so that we can, thank you, Andrea, so that we can examine, how am I being in community? What am I calling community? Is it just so that I can get a sense of importance, a sense of usefulness, a sense of validation, a sense of belonging? What am I using this for? And am I getting what I want or what I need in order for me to feel good about my participation and my belonging? And in the ways in which community sometimes, just like being in relationships, sometimes brings up the best and the worst of us, the same thing about being in communities, collectively, the best and the worst of us. And it is an opportunity for us to elevate our game individually, but also to call each other forward, which is what we do here in the Daily Huddle, that we call each other forward in our own greatness. So thank you, everybody, for being here with me today. Remember to love generously, laugh a lot, and frequently call if you can. Get at least 7 hours of sleep, stress less, eat more plant-based, move your body, give of yourself generously, and of course, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Always audit your assumptions. Thank you, everybody. See you next time.
One
Love,
love,
good
one love.
morning.
One love, one love.
Oye, que me andamos la misma camiseta, ¿verdad? Las dos.
Ah, mira, estamos tocados de Nueva York.
Hasta